Oathbreaker. Many have called it Season 6's best episode so far, even if that does not seem to be the clear consensus. I would rather see it as better than The Red Woman, but not as good as Home. So, let's look at what we got. Arya has finally made her mark. After 2 episodes, which she only seemed to be in to remind us that she still exists, we got some good Arya material at last. For the first time, we can't really be sure how much Arya Stark is still left in her. An interesting parallel to Jon Snow, by the way. Has she become no one now? While I am not convinced of that, we don't really know. This time there was no hint of her faking it. Has she learned to be no one, or has she learned to fake it? And of course, what will be her mission? I am sure it will take her to Westeros, though. It was certainly interesting that Jaqen seemed to be interested in Jon, the Hound, and her list. It's more clear than ever that Sandor Clegane will be back, and even Clegane Bowl might be possible again. I do wonder what the Faceless Men think about the Faith. Probably you remember that I pointed out a similarity between the two last week. Just a wild guess here. Could the High Sparrow be Arya's target? Killing the High Sparrow and hijacking the Faith would give the Faceless Men tremendous power if that's what they are looking for. Arya knows King's Landing well. I am sure, however, that the target won't be Jon. The Faceless Men probably don't even know that Jon lives. And why would they want to kill him? Even if some people seem to like the idea, I don't. Talking about the first Oathbreaker in this episode, Jon's scenes were also quite good, I think. I thought that he accepted the fact that he was actually dead and not only nearly dead a bit too readily, but that really is a minor concern. Much more important is his decision to leave the Watch. That went better than I would have expected. The possibility of him leaving the Watch had already been discussed all over the internet beforehand, and I'd always thought that it might not work, because it might seem that he were exploiting a loophole for his personal convenience. However, that wasn't the case. It felt more like the Watch expelled him when they stabbed him, not like he chose to leave so much, even if it was his decision in the end. This was especially emphasized by Jon talking to the traitors and Ollie in particular. It was a belated "you too, Brutus" moment, with Jon's disappointment and frustration all but palpable. It seems that the wildlings will follow Jon south now. Further north, and also much further south at the same time, we probably hear Jon being born. Many people seem to have enjoyed that scene. I partly agree. I loved the dialogue at the Tower of Joy, and I enjoyed Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven. It was also a great little detail that young Ned Stark sounded quite like Jon Snow. However, the fighting cannot be left unmentioned. For me, there were 2 central flaws here. Arthur Dayne didn't look like the best swordsman in Westeros, but more like a fighter from a Chinese martial arts movie, all but flying all over the place. It did not really fit the non-supernatural kind of swordsmanship we usually see in Game of Thrones. This guy's not supposed to be a Jedi or something. I mean, he even scissored this guy's head off. Dual wielding generally has a tendency to look gimmicky, and that's exactly what happened here. Dual wielding with long swords simply makes little sense if Arthur Dayne is not meant to be supernatural or something, like a dragon. But don't take my word for that. Every expert on medieval warfare will tell you quite the same. You can even find very good videos on the topic of dual wielding here on YouTube. Check the links below for that. The second flaw for me was Howland Reed. I was really looking forward to meeting the guy, but sadly it was a bit disappointing. There are 2 possible readings for his part in the fight. Either he was knocked out immediately and conveniently recovered just in time to stab Dayne from behind, or he played dead on purpose only to wait for a chance to stab Dayne from behind. If the first interpretation is true, I wonder why Ned even brought him in the first place instead of a better fighter. If the second interpretation is true, however, I don't think his plan was a good one, despite having worked out. I mean, he lay there, watching his comrades get butchered instead of fighting alongside them. And what if the opportunity to stab Dayne simply hadn't come? What if Dayne kills Ned and Reed still lies there waiting for his moment? That would have been fucked up, right? Either way, I didn't like Reed's role here. He also didn't really look like a Reed to me, rather just like a random Northman. Anyway, at least the scene worked pretty good in terms of Bran's development and set us up for the big reveal to come. We also meet another member of House Stark again, albeit under pitiful circumstances. Small John Umber, the new Lord Umber, and our potential second Oathbreaker, delivers him, Osha, and Shaggy Dog's head to Ramsay Bolton. But something smelled fishy there, very possibly several things even. The first question that came to my mind was, why would the Small John want to hand over the heir to Winterfell and join forces with Ramsay just now? Rickon must have been with the Umbers for a while now. It can't possibly have taken him longer to get to the last hearth than it took Bran to get to the Three-Eyed Raven. Having lost Sansa and killed Roose, Ramsay does not seem as desirable an ally as he did before. House Bolton is weaker now than it ever has been since receiving the Wardenship of the North. Many people have also pointed out that the wolf's head looked way too small to be Shaggy Dog's. I think I agree. It seems reasonable to assume that the Small John will betray Ramsay and be the show's substitute for Wyman Manderly and the Northern Conspiracy. The North remembers after all, doesn't it? My problem with all this being a setup, however, is that the plan doesn't seem to be very well thought out. Rickon is not a good hostage for Ramsay. Rickon is a major threat to his power and claim to Winterfell. The only thing he could hope to achieve with him would be to keep Jon at bay. But he doesn't even know that Jon lives at this point. He should know that he died, however. So what exactly is keeping Ramsay from flaying Rickon and raping Osha? I really don't like that after Sansa finally managed to flee, Ramsay is immediately presented with the next Stark to torture. Well, at least they didn't simply kill Rickon off, for lack of ideas what to do with him. For now. My personal highlight from this week's episode was the High Sparrow. There's more to this character than pure zealotry. He managed to convince Tommen that he is not his enemy, and we, the audience, also have to wonder how much of his magnificent preaching is sincere. More than ever, we feel this man's charismatic aura. King and High Septon are no longer at odds for now, despite Cersei still being confined to the Red Keep, awaiting her trial. This peace cannot last, however. Also in King's Landing, Qyburn has made Varys' little birds his own. This makes little sense. It's not like these kids are officially employed by the Crown or something. How would Qyburn even find out who they are? I mean, it's not like you can go to some random child and ask him, "Hey, did you spy for Varys recently? I am your new boss now." That just doesn't work, right? Cersei wanting spies all over Westeros is also absurd. It's inconceivable in a medieval world. The logistics just don't work out. A similar problem occurs in Meereen. How is Varys supposed to have established a spy network like the one in King's Landing in a foreign city that has already been infiltrated by the enemy? That doesn't really make sense. It's just a quite good recipe to get yourself killed. Meereen and Dany were underwhelming overall this episode. Dany's plot armor is all too obvious, and Meereen seems to be going nowhere. Sam and Gilly were just one more side note for now, but their story could be getting interesting very soon. So, we sadly have 3 predictions down now, with Howland Reed's underwhelming showing at the Tower of Joy. Anyway, 4 are still going. And that wraps it up for this episode. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, share, comment, and visit the shit out of our blog.